Women have the power to transform this world. We can end crime and violence if we all agree to do one thing: share. Let's share our wisdom, share our time, share our talents, share our finances, but most of all, let's share our love. This is the Female Solution.
And grand rising. Thank you all for joining us on this Wednesday edition of the Female Solution Global Radio TV show. I'm Naima Latif, and we've got another exciting guest for you to meet, someone you should know, someone who is a groundbreaker, someone who has courage, someone who has broken the glass ceiling for women in the area of finance. Joyce Selander is the first woman to enter the Chicago Stock Exchange and trade on the floor of the stock exchange, a place where millions are made, but also it's a jungle. And she is a woman of courage who has stepped out and made history and opened doors for so many women in the world of high finance when it comes to trading on the Chicago Stock Exchange and understanding the world of international business. And she's an author. She's written a book entitled Joyce, Queen of the Mountain. And she is, in fact, a queen. Let us welcome to the show Joyce Selander. Thank you for joining us today on the Female Solution Global Radio TV show.
All right.
Yes.
And first I want to say I was the first one on the floor of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange and the Chicago Board of Trade. So I really started trading in commodities. I had been in stocks, but lightly. But mainly for 30, 40 years, traded on the floor of the Commodity Exchange, Board of Trade, and the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, which have now merged, have now closed the floor.
And, you know, a lot of people, they see, you know, the little ticker tapes where, you know, they see the stock prices of certain companies up and others down and so forth. And they don't really understand what all of that means. So you are a person that has entered a field that for a lot of people is just like speaking a foreign language. How did you get started in that business? What were you doing before you got involved in the Chicago Mercantile Exchange?
Well, I was working at a bank and I was handling their large customers' loans secured by marketable collateral, which would be stocks, bonds. And I would compute margins every day. I got a call from a headhunter and he said, "Do you think you could do your same job in commodities?" And I said, "Sure, you just have to know the value of the price, the value of the contract, the size." And I would be doing exactly the same thing. So the next day he sent me to meet this guy who hired me on the spot. And there I was in commodities instead of stocks and bonds where I had been before. And sat all night up reading the rules book before I went to see him. And he hired me on the spot. So that was it. And then I found out that there was some illegal things going on at his company. He had just been audited. They didn't see it. And he sent me down on the floor to see if there were strange things going on down there. And there were. And then I got the job as running the floor operation on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. And that was back in 1968 when I started working with him. And I stayed in commodities since then on. And there were no women. There was one other woman on the floor. She worked for a big broker and just brought orders to him, but no women on the floor at all.
When I read your book, and it's a very powerful book, and really, for those of us who grew up a little later, we didn't realize how deep the discrimination against women was, open, blatant discrimination, where you can't be in this business. I mean, I was angry when I was hearing things that were said about women in terms of them just not being allowed to be in that area. So how did you break into the business of being on the floor where people, first of all, for those who don't understand, what exactly are you doing when it comes to trading and making deals? What is happening internationally in terms of products being sold?
Well, internationally, the exchanges are used a lot. Now they've closed down the exchanges a couple of years ago. But what it is that I started at the Merc, and they were trading pork bellies, which is bacon, and cattle, hogs. And then they were starting to move in a direction of financial. And it was all men on the floor. And you were not allowed, if you were down there, to enter the trading pit. Well, I was working, and my boss had an 80-year-old father. He said, if a fight breaks out, get him out of the pit. So I'd have to go in there and break the rules. And that's what it was. Go in and grab his father and take him out. In those days, we had beehives and mini skirts. And he'd hand me a comb to go comb my hair. And I'd grab him and drag him out of the pit, because I was about the same size as him, but I was stronger because he was 80. And back in 68, 80 was like being 90 or 100. And so that's how it started. But it really started by me finding something illegal going on and going down to the floor and watching it. And I said, oh, yeah. And I said, they violated all these rules. So it was then. So after the third time, I was fined for entering the pit. That's what happened. They gave me a big fine each time. The third time, the president called me down to his office and said about the fines and that I had to stop doing it. And I said to him, I said, you are prohibiting me from doing the best job I can for my customers. And that's illegal. And he went, ooh. So they had a board meeting a little while after that and decided that women could enter the pit. And it was the only one. Like I said, one other girl down there that worked for one of the biggest brokers. And I did mention, her in my book. And that was the beginning. Then the exchange itself, to make themselves look better, started hiring women, and they were up on the chalkboards. We weren't electronic back in 68, 69, and so they would write the last price on the board, and then everybody would look up at the chalkboards, and they'd put a couple women in there, and they'd had some women working at other desks, and women started to enter into the pit. It wasn't until 1977 that I actually bought my seat and started trading when they opened the financial markets, because I was more involved in finance than in cattle, hogs, and grains. And it sort of moved from there.
That's interesting, because for those, if you didn't grow up in that era and you've seen old movies, that was the era of mini skirts. And so women were basically in the corporate arena, they were there to look cute. And so people weren't taking us seriously as people who negotiated business deals or could think. It was very, very sexist, that whole environment. So you stepping out and being a leader in terms of breaking the mold, that's very significant. And even having to do the whole, cutesy miniskirt thing as you did it. But that's what
that was the style.
Yeah, that was the style. And for those who don't know what a beehive was, that's a hairdo as well. Like, kind of looks like a.
Yeah, your hair turned around and went out.
Yes. So yeah, you had the style of the 60s, but you were in a men's arena. Now, explain for those who may not have seen trading at the Merc and Steel Exchange, why does it get to a point of intensity where it could become violent and people could start fighting? What is actually happening that make people end up in that
Well,
kind of confrontation?
you've got like several hundred men in a circle, little wooden circle with stairs going up like that, and it's 4 bid, 5 selling. So that's 4 bid, that's 5 selling. And you could be in there and someone is bidding 4, and all of a sudden a trade goes on and he doesn't get part of it, and he was the original bidder, and then they start screaming and yelling at each other, and then fights break out. And it would happen almost every day in one of the pits, whether it was the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. That pork belly pit was wild, and hogs and cattle were a little more quiet, but that pork belly was crazy. And then over at the Board of Trade, it was the same thing. You had corn, you had wheat, you had soybeans. A soybean pit was huge, and the market just get busy. But if someone would do a trade and it was off the market, like it's 4 bid at 5, and a trade goes at 6, the whole pit would go nuts. We're 5 sellers. You can't trade at 6. And fights would break out all the time. I would think almost every day. I remember taking someone down to the Merc, a person that worked for the Merc, and I said, now, if a fight breaks out, you are to jump off that step and get out of the pit. And he said, okay, and we're in there. Fight breaks out. He jumps out of the pit, and I'm standing there. And he said to me, why didn't you jump out of the pit? I said, because the fight was the guy that was standing in front of you, and the guy I was standing next to was the biggest trader in the pit, and no one's going to touch him because they want to be able to trade with him. And he just said, whoa, but that would be a normal day.
Wow, that that's interesting that it could get that intense and it could get physically violent. But you have to be tough to be in that environment. So what is, I guess, if you don't get a chance to be heard, if you're on the floor and you're trying to be heard and you can't, is it a possibility that you lose money? Is that why it can get so intense?
Oh yeah, if they trade above or beneath where you are, and the market starts going in that direction, it could cost you a lot of money. And I've had interest in it. I had a fight there once because some guy hit me in the face, and there is violence in there, and it's all that motion of everybody and the screaming and the yelling and the hands, and because you're standing like this with your hands up in the air, and people walk into you, or they hit. I have got my right leg has got bruises all up and down it for 30 years now because people had turned around and I stood at a higher step because I'm so little, and they felt fine. I had a guy that would watch me, push me behind his body if fights broke out, because that happened all the time. And but I have a bruise. It won't go away from my knee down to my ankle because I've been kicked so many times. And then they'll go, oh, I'm sorry, Joyce, I'm sorry, because they didn't mean to do it. But when you turn around and you step on the step above you, you do. So a lot of physical things go on that are intentional.
Wow. Yeah, that's got to be a very intense atmosphere to work in every day.
Yeah.
And and I'm sure it toughened you up. Definitely. Well, we got to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we'll talk about how you were introduced in that arena to so many prominent people, and even information about a lot of events that people may not know about because you were in the area of where people of high finance and wealth circulate. And so that made some very interesting reading. And we're talking to Joyce Selander, author of the book, Joyce, Queen of the Mountain. And she's the first woman in the world to physically trade 30-year treasury bonds at the Chicago Board of Trade. So we'll be right back after this quick break. We're going to greet our global family listening from all around the world, and we will be right back after this quick break. So we want you all to stick and stay. Don't stray away.
We are We are global transformers, changing the world from the way it is to the way it should be. We are one. Wherever we live on this earth, we are one human family. On behalf of our team of radio hosts, I'd like to extend a greeting to all the members of our family, whenever and wherever you may be listening around the world. To our family in China, Ni Hao. In India, Namaste. In Japan, Konnichiwa. In Korea, Annyeonghaseyo. In Russia, Здравствуйте. In Germany, Guten Tag. In Poland, Dzień dobry. In France, Bonjour. In Spain, Hola. In Italy, Ciao. In Egypt, Ahlan wa sahlan. In Ghana, Akwaba. In Nigeria, Peleo. In South Africa, Sawubona. In Senegal, Nangadef. In Kenya, Jambo. In Israel, Shalom. In Pakistan, Afghanistan, Palestine, and Saudi Arabia, Assalamu alaikum. Greetings, and may peace be upon you all. Join us live on the on-air radio network. Call 727-731-5192. We want to talk to you.
All right. And we are back. Well, you are listening to and watching the Female Solution Global Radio TV show. I'm Naima Latif, and our guest today is Joyce Selander, who is author of the book, Joyce, Queen of the Mountain. Might be looking backwards for where I sent it. But of course, this is a significant book because it really helps us appreciate how far women have come in the world of business. And it helps us to appreciate those who have broken the barriers so that now all over the world, we're seeing prominent women who not only are internationally involved in all levels of business, but also that very important part when it comes to trading. And the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, just like the New York Stock Exchange and all of the areas where decisions are made and deals are made, and people who are responsible for that, they make a lot of money in the course of one day. It's figures that some people can't even imagine. So, Joyce, what's the highest figure you've made in one single day at the Mercantile Exchange?
You know, I truthfully, well, I know I lost $5,000 one day.
Oh.
And I was having a lot of personal problems and stuff. And I came in the next day and made the 5,000 back in the first half hour, and took it easy the rest of the day. But to be truthful, I can't even tell you my biggest day. I'm not really sure. I traded small. I traded ones and twos. The guy that stood behind me, my protector, he traded hundreds. So if he saw my hands going up like that, which is buy, and he would buy across the pit 100 lots, and then he'd tap my back and 2 or 3 fingers, whatever he did of what I was bidding for, because he was watching me and knew I was right. So when you do that, being on the floor, you meet a lot of interesting people. And I was down in the S&P pit one time, and I see these Japanese people there, and I went, konnichiwa, Kachidemasti. And then I go, Ichiban Takai, Brokadas. And they went like this to the guy standing next to me. And he said to me, what did you say? I said you were the number one trader inside of the S&P pit. And he nodded. And now these guys, because they'd gone like this, all of a sudden they bowed all the way down to their head, to their stomach, because they were meeting the biggest trader on the floor.
Wow.
And he was like shocked. And they came later and had their boss came over and said, well, that's the number one trader. And it was like that. So met a lot of presidents. I mean, down on the floor, I met President Gorbachev over at the Merck. Next day, I went to the Board of Trade. I had to go give a check to one of the guys that was in the soybean pit. And I walked in, and Gorbachev standing over there.
Wow.
With his wife. And all of a sudden he sees me and he's waving like this at me. And the whole pit turns around like, how does she know President Gorbachev? You know?
Oh, wow.
So it was things like that all the time. And I met every president in the United States that while I was working there and their wives. I liked the Nixon. Mrs. Nixon was a doll. And you just meet a lot of people. They come down on the floor. They always would see me as the only woman and say, well, what is that woman? I want to meet her. And they'd come over. So it was good because they were seeing back at that time that major changes were starting to happen in the financial world after I came down, and especially when I started trading. And when I started, there was a girl in the silver pit. And God, she was a damn good trader. And she worked for a big company. So I'd watch her. I could see her from an angle. And I made probably my biggest trade ever would be in the silver pit and gold. I did a lot of gold and silver, yet the 30-year bond is what I traded every single day. That's also the largest contract in the world. It still is. And trading daily, $1 million something a day. And it's where everybody goes, especially with the interest rates like right now. Everybody's in there trading that 30-year bond because that's going to stabilize the market. You look at the 10-year to see what's the middle between the high and the low, but that 30-year is what they all trade. And that's where I was. I can't hear you. Oh.
I still hit mute. I'm sorry. So for people who don't know, how does a trader make their money? Is it on a percentage of what you sell? How do you get paid?
No, you're dealing straight cash. If you buy something, you pay, there's a margin, which is a percentage of the value, but like the bond, one is $100,000 is the amount of the 30-year bond. Mm-hmm. So you put up a portion of that as your margin money. And that sits in your account till you sell it. So if you buy it, it's there. When you sell it, the margin money just comes off your sheet. But your balance stays as the value of what you made. If you bought it at 3% and you sell it at 4%, you make a percent, which on $100,000 would be a lot. Now, $100,000 is only one contract. I'd trade 2 or 3. So every day I'd be trading, well, by the end of the day, a lot, sometimes $1 million. But the guys that do it and trade big, like trade 100 contracts of $100,000, every time they open their mouth, they're making $1 million. The numbers there. But by the end of the day, it depends where you bought the bond and where you sold it. And that cash goes into your account every night if you bought and sold it. So you deal straight cash on what the market did within the day on the contract that you bought and sold.
So they say that the way to make money is buy low, sell high. So, whatever you sell at greater than what you bought, that's your
money's in your account that day, the close of the night. And so you're making money. But what happens is you never have to put up the 100,000 buying one cost 100,000. You only put up a percentage, and they call that a margin. That's how I started working on margins. So what would be the margin on maybe $100,000 bond? You put up $5,000, and you had to have $5,000 in your account to just trade one. So if you were trading 100 of them, you had to have a hell of a lot more money in your account to cover it. So, but that was it. But a lot of day traders, that's what they call them when they buy and sell it in one day. A lot of people hold on to positions. Your wealthier people, your bigger traders could hold their positions for months. And it was just like in the market. And, you know, market goes up and down. Then you got what's called limit. Limit means if it hits the limit, the trading stops. So if you bought something and it winds up closing limit up, that means the high of the day, then you've made a lot of money. That cash is in your account. And that'll represent what you made on like one lot, $100,000. So you're talking big money, but also on a percentage basis.
I see. So this is definitely a business where you need to have money to make money, but is it possible to start out where you may not have the thousands and work up to that point? I mean, how much would you say a person needs to have available if they're going to enter the business as a trader? Well,
you know, if you're only trading one lot, I think you'd probably, it depends on the house. They may say we want you to have 10,000 in your account. They may say they want you to have 30,000. In many cases, you need 100. When 100,000 in there. When my nephew started trading, I had to physically and financially back him. So they knew I knew if he had a bad day in the market and he didn't have enough money, they'd take it out of mine. So if people are helping you, then they're financially responsible also. But usually you'd come in and open an account. If you're trading one or two lots, then, you know, anywhere from 10, 30,000. But if you took a position home, you had to have the margin for it, which I told you was like a percentage of the value. So the $100,000 bond, you may have to put up $5,000 overnight for it. So you had to have money in your account to carry your position overnight or to lose money. The minute you went debit in your account, if you lost money, they'd cut you off from trading right away.
Oh my. Oh my. So
that's how I started doing margins.
Yeah. So now you mentioned the various pits. So there is a different pit for each product.
Oh yeah. And very, very different. And they have to be because they're all separate. The prices are separate, and the bidding goes on the last digit of your trade. So let's say if you're trading even soybeans or cattle, whatever, the price would be what is the price of the cattle. So maybe you're paying, let's say if the cattle is trading at $56, you know, for a pound or something, and you got a big one. So you had to put up a big percentage of money to go in and trade. If you bought and sold every day and went home with no position, you were building money up. You didn't have to put up. But if you're going to go in and trade and hold on like a cattle hedger, a guy who has cattle, and let's say he's got 500 head of cattle, he'd have to be in there and put a lot of money up to have that trade sitting there that would really be balancing his money off. So he's getting ready to sell cattle and he owns it. So he'd go sell in the market, and you have to have enough money to cover whatever your position was. So it had to do with how many cattle you bought or how many bonds you bought. And then your percentage of that was put into the account. But where your account really went was how the change from day to day, how the price changed on the amount you had. But the contracts are big, you know, 30-year bond, it's $100,000 for one contract. But you didn't need to put the 100,000 up. You put the margin, the percentage.
Wow.
So it's an expensive game.
It's an expensive game. We got to take another break, and when we come back, we'll talk a bit about how, as you know, the first woman to break the barrier, how you became very well known in certain circles, and certainly made a difference in the culture there of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and I'm sure it spread nationwide to open the doors for women to be taken seriously in a high finance business. So we'll be right back after. So just stay with us. You're watching the Female Solution Global Radio TV show. I'm Naima Latif with Joyce Selander. Be right back. So stay with us.
The Soulful Chicago Book Fair, Woodlawn's premier summer event, returns to 61st Street between Cottage Grove and King Drive, Saturday, August 9th, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Join us for another celebration of literary works by and about the Black experience, featuring children's books, fiction books, and non-fiction works by local and international authors. The main stage will host an entertainment lineup second to none, with Pari Lemuel, Aniba and the Soul Stars, and the mesmerizing Moo Moo Fresh. Special guest, DJ Celeste. The community stage features a variety of family-friendly performances, such as DJ sets produced by IC Music, an organization that trains and promotes blind audio engineers. All this and more, Saturday, August 9th, free and open to all. Be there. Visit soulfulchicagobookfair.com for more information.
And we are back. You're listening to and watching the Female Solution Global. Oh, there we go. And I'm Naima Latif, and we have been speaking to author Joyce Selander, who is author of the book Joyce, Queen of the Mountain. She's the first woman in the world to physically trade 30-year treasury bonds at the Chicago Board of Trade. And for those who live in the Chicagoland area, you've probably seen the Board of Trade building. I used to work at the Federal Reserve Bank, and coming into the city downtown area on the Metro, I passed by the building, and it's kind of south, big building, but so many people have no clue as to what goes on there and how much that affects the global marketplace. They have some vague notion, but they really don't understand. And so your appearance here today is a real education for a lot of people, especially when you think of major industries, the agricultural industry, and you speak about, trading pork bellies, and, people don't realize this is, it's a big deal. Just like when Oprah mentioned that she was going to stop eating beef, the beef farmers, they had a fit, because one little statement like that could affect trading, could affect prices for their cattle, billions of dollars. So it does matter what people buy and what is prominent in terms of what can be sold and all the politics that are involved in this very powerful industry. You tell a story even in meeting President Nixon and how his wife, Pat, addressed you by name, and you were surprised and she knew your name. She knew who you were. Tell us a bit about that.
Oh, yeah. I had, at the time, I was dating the lead Secret Service agent to the president of the United States, and the president and his wife came into town, and I was at the hotel where they were, and a couple Secret Service agents in there, and as she came walking in, and I walked up and said, "Oh, hi, Mrs. Nixon, how you doing?" And she said, "Hi, Joyce." I went, "Oh, wow." Anyway, we were talking, and the Secret Service agents weren't by her. They were on the other side of the room, but they were watching because they know who I was. And he comes walking up, and with him is my boyfriend and the manager of the hotel. And I'm standing, and he looks around, and there were no agent by her, and he got really nervous. It was funny. And he came walking up and grabbed her arm and pulled her closer to him. And she said, "Oh, honey, you remember Joyce? She dates Denny Shaw," which I have in my book, his name, who was a Secret Service agent. And, but he still held on to her. He was so worried that she didn't have an agent next to her. And that was like so big in those days that you had to be careful. And that was at the time of the Democratic Convention in Chicago, where we did have a lot of problems went on. And, when you're out walking around, you see what's going on. And the same thing sort of happens on the floor. And you meet so many people, and, you stay up on what the markets are doing. And still in my head now, every day I turn the TV on to see if the market's up, market's down. I watch different contracts. I watch the bonds. I watch whether the S&P is up and the Dow's up and all these things, because it really determines where our life is going. Like right now, things are very, very confusing in the market, and just too many things went on 4 years ago that should have been taken care of and weren't. And now we've got possibility of war. So much of those things you see through the market itself, or you hear through the people that trade. So being down there is knowledgeable. And when I started, I had to go in and trade like a man, act like a man, get beaten up like a man. And the men respected the fact that I did perform like a man, not going, "Oh, well, what about me?" They'd hate that. But if I was in there, I'd be, "Wait, I'm the better." I mean, you had to perform like a man. And I did that for years. But I was so lucky because I had many men that protected me. They watched what I was doing. They watched that I was one of them. I acted like them, and they were protecting and watching over me. And I had a very good friend that did that for many, many years. And they watched that I knew what was going on in the market. So I'd be in there, and a lot of people would have their eyes on me all day long. And, but, I'm very bright. I'm a high IQ'd. I see things other people don't see. And that was one of my points in the pit. But if you get in there, you got to act like a man. You got to fight like a man. You have to be one of them. And I was well respected by many, many traders because of that. I mean, there were days I would walk out of that pit crying at the end of the day. I'd lost so much money or whatever had happened. I'd been hurt in the pit, but you had to be like a man. And were there days men were there? I remember one day leaving, 3 guys were sitting on the pit crying like this.
Wow.
It's down, tears rolling down, because they'd lost so much money and had had bad days. So you just had to be like them. And then on a good day, I have one there about a guy that lost several $100,000 one day in 1 second. He came in, the market opened, and it just killed him. And at the end of the day, I saw him and said, "Well, there's always tomorrow."
Wow.
One of them. And he got it back the next day. I was right.
That's right.
But at the end of the day, he was all smiles at me. But, you really had to act like a man, be like a man, although nothing about me looks like a man. So,
Well, and it sounds like a very intense atmosphere. Describe for us, what is the process of trading? You have to make yourself heard. You have to make your bid heard. Describe how that whole arena is that requires that kind of aggression.
One of my assets, I have a scream that makes windows shake. Ooh. So I'm in there yelling against 500 men. Wow. And I'm 3 bid, and I yell, 3 bid or something, and they all heard me. But a lot of people, I mean, I've got a like this, and they'd all go, anyway, sometimes, So I was always heard, even with the fact that in the bond pitch you had 500 traders and 1,500 clerks, and they're all screaming at once. And the clerks are yelling at the brokers, sell 10 at 5 or whatever. And so that there was constant noise, very, very loud. So my loud voice helped me. My fact that I wouldn't let people push me around. I'd say, get out of my face. And I got in there and traded like a man. And I became successful that way. But like I said, I had men that watched over me. I was lucky. Even from the president of the Merck, he was a good friend of mine. I would do a little business for him. He said, you're in the pit. If it does such and such, do this. But it's very loud, very noisy, very, very physical. And, I'm 5'4", 110 pounds. And the guy standing behind me was 6'4", 235, 45 pounds, so a little different. But I still worked like a dog, and they appreciated that I traded like a man and acted like a man and didn't do woo kind of things, It kept me going.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's clear, of course, that you have the mental acuity and the drive to be successful in this business. Now, one of the things that says on the back of your book, you say it takes many skills to be a good bond trader. You have to have an ego and great nerve, and you must be smart, quick, and mentally strong. You have to learn from your mistakes. You have to know when to have patience, and you have to be physical. Author Joyce Selander has all of these. At barely 5'5" and 110 pounds dripping wet, she ventured into the hand-to-hand financial combat every day for 13 years as the first woman to physically trade physical futures in the pits at the Chicago Board of Trade. In this memoir, she tells of standing toe-to-toe with 500 shouting, sweating, testosterone-hyped male traders, all trying to reach the top of the financial mountain. Through her work, Selander met diplomats and U.S. presidents, dated Secret Service agents, and saw murder, mayhem, and a personal plot to overthrow the Taliban and 9/11. Joyce, Queen of the Mountain, provides an insider's look at the workings of the Chicago Board of Trade and the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and gives insights into the strategies and styles of its key players. A story of ethics, innovation, and visionary leadership. It narrates the inspiring memoir of one woman who rose to the top of her profession. And of course, this is a book that you need to have, not just women to be inspired, but men to really understand what we've overcome, the attitudes that were spewed at us as women seeking to enter that world of high finance and global business, which is what this is all about. So, of course, it's a powerful book. I'm not going to give away a lot of the plot because I want you all to buy it. And we'll talk about how you can order this book. But, there are some great stories because you, as it says here, you had an insight into a lot of things happening on the political arena because, you're dating Secret Service people and meeting diplomats and all of that, which is all a part of world trade when it comes to making these major decisions everything is connected to politics. And like you mentioned, some of the things happening now is really having a big impact on major companies, major businesses. And if a person is involved, first of all, tell us the difference between trading stocks and trading on the mercantile exchange. What are the differences?
Well, it was live trading on the Chicago Board of Trade and the Merc.
Mm-hmm.
And so you were physically trading it. Stocks, you usually go through a broker, you tell them what they want. They go onto the stock floor or through their own companies, and they buy things for you.
Mm-hmm.
I think the stock exchange wasn't as physical because a lot of things were done. If you went to a company and you wanted to buy 500 shares of something and they happen to have 3,000, they may sell you 500 of theirs instead of really putting you out in the market where everybody can try to get it. So, I mean, there are different rules, regulations, different ways of trading, but on the floor at the stock exchange, you were pretty much like the floor of the Board of Trade or the Merc, but a lot of things were done up in the office and electronically. And now that they've closed the Board of Trade and the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, it breaks my heart, but now everybody's into electronic trading and you have to go onto a computer and do it. And it's very different, and the computer isn't 3-bit at 4 and then 4-bit at 5. It could be 3-bit and maybe you'll pay 8 for something. You don't know what's going on in between, and very strange. I'd had incidents when I'd called orders to another exchange and I wasn't happy with the fill, and I'd say, you're going to give me what I want, which normally would happen because I threaten them. That's life in the big city, sometimes you have to be pretty tough to get things done. Mm-hmm. But now everything has gone electronic. It's different. You haven't got the kind of people like me where I stood and traded 1, 2, 3 lots, 200,000-300,000 on a crack in there. But a lot of guys did $1 million. The guy that I introduced to the Japanese that time, they were like shocked, and then they stood watching him and they were like, whoa, when they saw him doing 100 lots that he was trading in the S&Ps, which is big contract. Pretty surprised. But you had big traders that may not stay in for a long period of time, but they were in and out and in and out. What they did was keep the market at 1 bid at 2, 2 bid at 3. Now you may have 1 bid at 10. I mean, it's very different. You don't have those people in between like you used to. And if you do, they're big people. The little people would create good things and keep the market in line. And I don't know, like I sit watching the trades, my eyes sometimes wonder when you see the S&Ps are up 100 and then they're up 120 or something that should be up 101, 102, 103. It's different now that they've taken it off the floor.
Yeah, everything's electronic now. So
everything's electronic. You're fighting a computer instead of me.
Yeah, so now they don't have people on the floor trading merchandise, trading products, and or trading stock. Now everything is on your computer, so that means there's no human interaction at all anymore. Is that how it's changed?
Yeah, there's human interaction, but you got to call a broker, and a broker has to talk to his people, and maybe it's not put across the whole world like it was in the pit. It may stay within the company you're trading, and your fills could be different than if you were trading with the company next door who had a better bid. So, I mean, I think you see more variations in price than you did. I got a note the other day from the one of the old vice chairmans of the exchange. As of Monday, the Board of Trade just opened up a museum in the Board of Trade building. Wow. Yeah, which I'm dying to go see. I wanted to go see it today. I may still do it, but it shows the floors and it's got pictures of the trading that went on. So I'm dying to see. But it was really nice of the former, I think it was the vice chairman, to send me a little text saying, hey, Joyce, we've opened it up as of Monday. So go down and see the museum at the Chicago Board of Trade building, which was across the street from you. And it was so funny because on the top of that building was Series, goddess of grains, a woman, but there were no women working in the building. And I'd always, that was many years ago, of course. But from my window at my house, I was able to go. A lot of buildings have since moved in there, but I could see from my window on Lakeshore Drive right to the top of the Board of Trade and see Ceres. So all the guys had come over, and after we'd go out drinking or partying, and we'd do a shot, and we'd say, "To you, Ceres, we'll get you tomorrow. Drink our shot and move on."
Wow. And I know you got to miss those days, because you look at people that, it's any kind of work environment, of course, is intense, but I'm sure there are some memorable moments that just bond you to those people forever. We got to take one last break, but when we come back, we'll talk about what you learned, what you feel like you learned being in that environment, and also some tips that you would give to women who may want to enter a man's world and what it takes to just tough it out. So we'll be right back after this last break. So stick and stay. Don't stray away. You're watching the Female Solution Global Radio TV show. I'm Naima Latif, and we've been talking to author Joyce Selander. Joyce, Queen of the Mountain. It's a book you gotta read for some inspiration. So we'll be right back after this last break. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Naima Latif, and if you're watching this, that means you're one of the 4.6 billion people from around the world who are using an electronic device to talk to people. In these times, people are using the internet to talk to everybody. Friends, neighbors, family members, co-workers. People are on their cell phones and computers all day long. Now, if you're in business, that is great news. That means you can sell your products and services all day long and never have to leave your home. All you need is a media connection, somebody to connect you to an audience. And that's why I'm talking to you today. We produce programs, and our audience members are people who shop. They buy clothes, food, beauty supplies, cleaning supplies, home repair, transportation services, child care services. Whatever you're selling, they need to buy it. We're your media connection. Just follow this link, and tomorrow you can sit back and relax at home while your business is making you money.
And we are back. You're listening to and watching the Female Solution Global Radio TV show. I'm Naima Latif, and we are here speaking to a fantastic author and a groundbreaker, a glass ceiling smasher, Joyce Selander, author of this book, Joyce, Queen of the Mountain, as the first woman in the world to physically trade 30-year treasury bonds at the Chicago Board of Trade. Now you can see this photo and see I guess this is the pits where people are, and you see the shouts and everything. So it's each section there. Is that how it's sectioned off? Each one is a different pit. Is that how?
Yeah, that's one big pit. That bond pit was huge. Huge.
Mm-hmm.
So that whole front is the bond pit, and then on the far right side was a 10-year, which was just opening. It was very, very small at the time, but all those people traded the 30-year. So it was very crowded.
Oh my. And you with your piercing voice, you were able to be heard. So that's using your femininity to your advantage.
It was wild.
Yes. So obviously, of course, there had to be those during that time that discouraged you and made you feel like you had no business there. Tell us a time when you had to really overcome the discouragement from men who may have resented your presence because they just felt this is no place for a woman?
Well, I don't think that once I got in the pit and I started trading and I acted like a man and performed like a man, people didn't seem to do that to me. When we got a few more women in the pit, they were down on them more than me. But I also had men that protected me. It's so funny. One Irish guy I told you I stood by, and then when he died in a motorcycle crash, another Irishman who's 6'6", played for the Bears a little bit, came over and said, "I'm going to stand next to you, Joyce. I'll watch over you." So you had a mixture of people that they all began to like me. So I don't think it was that prejudice. But at first, of course, it was hard to get trades. I mean, if everybody's bidding 4 and everybody's selling at 5, I wouldn't be the first person they're going to sell down at 4 to. And it was a hard job and work, but I just kept bidding all day and I just kept going at it. And I fought very hard, and the men respected that. And I really didn't have to put up with too much humiliation and aggressiveness on their side. I was well liked, and I certainly liked the men. I have very little bad things to say. I had incidents in the pit. Everybody does, whether you're a man or the biggest trader, the smallest trader, or whatever. But I was very lucky. I think that's part of it. But then I worked like a dog in there. It just
yeah, you tell some great stories, and like this the chapter on the Smith brothers. Of course, now they they sound like they were like real friends. That
very good friends, right?
Yes.
And then the one left the trading pit to become a priest. He just felt that God had been with him, and he felt so into God that he left at 30, I think it was 32, 33, and went into the priesthood. So, you had a lot of people do different things, but yet he was in there fighting just like me every day. And so many. I had 2 brothers that were in there too, and they were giving money to protect this country from what did happen on 9/11. They knew it was going to happen, and they were fighting to try to save people. And we lost a lot of friends, in the bombing of New York. A girl had just come from New York and was renting a seat and went back to close up her office and got killed in that building going down. So there were so many things that you saw all the time and you heard. And like I knew these brothers were giving money to try to prevent it from happening. And then look, they get on a plane with all Americans and fly them into the World Trade Center. Crazy things would go on. And I had called the head of the exchange and say, "We've got to get out of here. Something's going on. Something's wrong." I go down, and we left when the building blew. I said, "We have to get out of here. Are they going to blow this building next?" And there was a plane near Chicago that possibly could have, and you didn't know. And I was hearing it in the financial world, not from the Secret Service or my FBI friends or anything, just there. And life was just very difficult because you do hear a lot of information on the floor. I miss it because I'm missing what's going on in this world now.
Yeah.
And my book does talk about these 2 brothers that gave a lot of money to try to stop the World Trade Center from going down because there was a little talk of it.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I realized in reading this book. You had a very close-up view of history as it was happening, the insides of politics and finance, and it's all tied together. And that's what we have to understand. This is a global economy, and we are all in this together, whether we understand it or not. I know we've got to go. It's been fascinating talking to you, Joyce Selander. And of course, we have a books page on our website. We want to make sure people can get to your book, so we will give them the link on our website of where they can order directly from you and call you and order this book, because you need to read this. This is a history book.
Yeah,
really
I
think
think
about.
it's also on Amazon.
Yes, of course, you can
Amazon.
always get it on Amazon. We'll, give you those links as well and refer you to the Amazon.
Yeah, they've got, and also they could call iUniverse. It's on
Yeah.
the back of the book because iUniverse is where my book comes from, and they could probably order it there also.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it's so funny because I will say one thing: the biggest buyers of my book are men. They want to say, "How did she, this little bitty girl, how did she make it in that market?" And I still do. I'll come in heaven. It's all men. Well, men. When I had it in bookstores, women came in to buy it. But like if I have a special event at my country club up in Lake Geneva, it's all men buying my book.
I'm certainly not surprised because
Yeah.
I think men can learn a lot from your experience as well. The courage that you showed, and it really comes down to the fact that we can do anything we choose, and we can be the best at it. And Joyce, you have proved that you were queen of the mountain. So we certainly do congratulate you for making history, being a part of history, and shaping the future. Thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed it. I can't get a smile off my face. I'm so laughing and thinking of happiness of the floor.
Oh, I know those have got to be some great memories. Well, of course, even though everything's gone electronic and we've been separated by these computer screens, we're still connected. One world, one economy.
Right.
And if you want to get into a money-making business, you may want to get into trading, because that could do it. And as you've heard, you can make millions in one day with just the right moves. But thank you so much, Joyce. We appreciate you. And thank you all for joining us on this edition of the Female Solution Global Radio TV show. Come on back and join us for Mama Africa's Marketplace on Thursdays. And until that time, we want you to continue to shine your light.
Thank you.
We've come to the end of our show today. If you missed any broadcasts, go to our website for the audio and video archives at www.thefemalesolution.com. On behalf of our team of radio hosts, I'd like to thank all of you who participated in today's discussions. And to our global family joining us from all around the world, we say thank you. To our family in China, xie xie. India, zhanyavad. Japan, arigato. Korea, kamsamnida. Russia, spasiba. Germany, danke. Poland, dziękuję. France, merci. Spain, gracias. Italy, grazie. Egypt, shukran. Ghana, madasi. Nigeria, eshe. South Africa, ngiyabonga. Senegal, jareh. Kenya, asante. Israel, toda. Pakistan, shukriya. Afghanistan, tashakur. Saudi Arabia and Palestine, shukran. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Thank you, and may peace be upon you and the mercy of God and God's blessings.